So, welcome to part 8 of the series From Scratch to Scratch. We're starting off at scratch and taking you through to scratch handicap. We're doing the whole lot. So, what we've developed is an understanding, a recap of pre-shot routine based around good grip and good posture. We've understood that the primary motion in the backswing is the shoulder turn that gives us our power and impetus into the shot. We're able to control that power by giving various lengths of shoulder turn. And then we talked about forearm rotation. And the forearm rotation, we had the choice to fade the ball or to draw the ball simply by the use of the hands. So it leads us on in sequence from the shoulder turn to the forearm rotation. The missing piece has been wrist hinge. Now you can miss it because wrist hinge is very subtle. The shoulders start off at 0 and they turn through 90 degrees broadly. Okay, so 90 degrees in this direction, out for 180. The same is true of the forearms. If I put my forearms out, my forearms start at neutral, they're rolled to 90 and they're rolled through 180 in the follow through. So they're big components. Now when I show you wrist hinge, if the club were up my sleeve and I dressed the ball like this, then indeed I'd be finding 90 degrees wrist hinge. But as we said earlier in building the grip, we know that the club runs across the palm and there's an angle between the forearm and the shaft. So if I do this, you can see that I've got a certain amount of wrist hinge before I even start. So the wrist hinge that we're talking about now that controls the trajectory of the shot and how high we hit the ball is only that. It's very subtle. It's about 45 degrees. So if I show you a full swing that is shoulder and forearms, the only missing bit is wrist hinge. And if you then blend that wrist hinge into the backswing, it becomes invisible. Okay? So here's a backswing with no wrist. Here's a backswing with wrist. You can't play golf in two lumps. I know you're mad. So you mix the two as you turn, shoulder and wrist. But this is subtle. This is very subtle. If I go back with no wrist hinge, that lends itself to a low shot. If I go back with wrist hinge, then I'm going to get normal trajectory. And then in a minute, I'll show you how to increase those factors. So, this is a links course in Holland. This is the Kennemer Club. And let's imagine that we're playing into the wind. Okay? So, I play the ball fairly centrally, not back of centre, and I'm not looking for a divot. I'm just going to go back with no wrist hinge. I could hinge to here, but I'm not going to. So here we go. No wrist hinge going back, and no wrist hinge going through. Okay, now you can see the ball's going forward low, and you'll pick up from the sound of the shot that it's a bit thin. Well, that's a good thing. And what you'll notice about that shot, although I didn't quite button it, because it came out of the bottom groove and went forward, it released when it landed. If you play the ball off the back foot with a big divot, yes, it might squeeze low, but that ball can dig its toes in, or jump, or generally screw to the left. By playing the shot with passive wrist hinge and no divot, the ball had less spin and cuts through the wind. So, that's a low shot because there's no wrist hinge. I'm now going to add in just a little bit of wrist hinge. Let's say half of the wrist hinge at my disposal. You see the ball's going a little bit higher and consequently a little bit further. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a full quota of shoulder turn and wrist hinge. This is wrist hinge of 90 and this is shoulder turn of 90. So if I give you those two, then I'm giving you the full complement. This will be a full swing. So off we go. Full blend and full release. So happy to say that was the highest shot. It went the furthest and landed. So just by knowing which part of the body does which is very helpful. The way your body turns is your basic power. The way your forearms move is the shape of the shot. And what you see now is that the wrist cock, be it active or passive, is the thing that controls how high the ball flies. All right, so let's suppose we're playing on a very windy day, really windy day. I want even less wrist hinge. So I'm going to go down the handle. And you veterans of my website will know there's a wrong way of going down the handle and a right way. The wrong way is to do this, because I've become shorter and this angle hasn't changed. The correct way of going down the handle is pulling the club up the sleeve. Okay? Now when you pull the club up your sleeve, you lose wrist hinge and you also have quieter forearms in the swing. So here's a full scale setup, pull the club up my sleeve and walk in to make up the difference. So now I'm going to play a shot that has even less wrist hinge. I'm just going to go to here. Off we go. Now you can see how low that went. Okay, and it's going to release because there's no divot and it scampers up. Okay, so I get a double benefit. By pulling the club up my sleeve, I actually have negative wrist hinge. With a normal grip, I've got correct wrist hinge. But if I pull the club up my sleeve, automatically I've lost wrist hinge. So I've got rid of 45 degrees before I even start. Okay, so by pulling the club up the sleeve and walking in, you've reduced wrist hinge. But the other thing is, you've reduced forearm rotation. Makes you more accurate. Okay, so off we go, no wrist hinge. Alright, like a bullet. It's going to release on the bounce. And up we go. Okay, so try and avoid seeing a low shot as a punch or with a divot that you can bury the club cat in. Yes, you'll develop spin, but when you squeeze the ball to the back with the divot, you don't really know what the ball's going to do when it lands. And if it lands, it will probably screw to the left anyway. So this gets the ball to cut through the wind like a hot knife through butter. The lower the spin rate, the more penetrating the flight. And I think I've demonstrated to you the accuracy and the release when the ball lands. Okay, so that was playing into the wind, nice low shot by getting rid of wrist hinge. What are we going to do? Hit the ball higher. Well, happily we go back to a normal setup, but we're going to actively use the wrist much earlier and as much as we can. So if I turn to this, this would be a normal 6-iron backswing. I'm now going to show you one to hit a high shot. Hinge the wrist early, re-hinge as quickly as I dare. Okay, so let's suppose I'm going downwind. Okay, that will help me. I may need to go sort of 4-iron distance, but I need 8-iron trajectory. Well, I'll get my 6-iron out and I'll employ the wrist. So hit the ball further and higher. So here we go. This is going to be a 6-iron, same ball position, everything else the same. I'm just going to hinge my wrists early and release them as quickly as I can. I think you can see that's the highest shot I've hit so far. I didn't quite get the draw spin I wanted. There was a hint of cut about that. And that tends to be the case with a high wristed shot. You're less likely to lose the ball to the left. Okay, so I'm going to hinge the wrist early and use my right hand as quickly as I can. Hinge and re-hinge. There we go, there's the highest shot, and I've got it up to pin high now. Land softly. Okay, so you see that's how good the GC2 simulator is. If you catch it thin, the ball releases. If you pure it, it lands softly. So it's just like being there. It's a tremendous piece of kit. All right, so there we have it. We're going to control the trajectory through our preparation, and we're understanding that if the wrists are passive, the ball goes low, and if the wrists are active, the ball goes high. Don't think for a minute that you lose accuracy because of the wrist hinge. The reverse is true. If I'm hitting a fence post with a hammer, I'm in plane. If I cock my wrists, I'm still in plane. If I show you the golf swing, I can be non-wristy in this plane or wristy. Okay, so the thing across all those shots, they all started as they should, a little bit right of target. A couple didn't quite draw back, but I can think you can see very clearly the vapor trail shows the low shot versus the high shot. This is the wrist being passive, this is the wrist being active. Now, there's not one of you out there watching this video that can't do that. It's a question of going to the practice ground and teaching yourself how to do it. And remembering that improvisation is the best teacher you'll ever have.